moving forward. That's had some trickle-down ramifications. Why do I have to live in New York City, where it's incredibly expensive, if my boss is letting me work from home? So we're beginning to see a flight from New York to Florida, to New Jersey, to Connecticut, to Rhode Island. And by the way, we're seeing this, I'm seeing this with my students. My students have decided, we are, by the way, for last March, when the pandemic had really taken force, the university decided to send the students home on very short notice, and that all classes would be by way of Zoom. So we got through the semester, although it was a challenge, and we got through the summer, and that was a challenge. And for the fall, the university, I think, made the right decision not to bring students back. Now, Juan, you'll enjoy this. So we told the students, forget about coming back to the campus. The campus is closed. All buildings are closed. The library is closed. We'll allow certain students, very limited, to come back if you're taking a laboratory course that requires you to be there. And secondly, any students that could make a compelling case for why they shouldn't be home. And so maybe about 200 students are on campus being housed and being fed. But interestingly enough, over 2,000 students have come to Washington to live. So these are students that have every right to be home, but they have decided, despite the fact that the school is closed, on campus that is, they want to live in the area. So we suddenly have rents going through the roof in the Georgetown area and other parts of the city. So go figure that one out. And I'm also hearing from students, just like business people, Professor, if I don't have to be there, I think I'm going to go to Florida for the fall. I'm going out to Colorado to go skiing. I'm going to go live with a friend in California. So we're seeing a lot of movement. The students are being incredibly creative as to where they want to be. So that's the environment we find ourselves in. We would like to think, and I can tell you this morning, that the Democrats in the House, remember in America, the Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate, Republicans control the White House. So the Democrats have been pushing a $2 trillion relief bill, and the other side has come back with 1.6. I think that's awfully close. The negotiating parties are the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and the U.S. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, who I'm confident is speaking on behalf of the president. And then they got to convince the Senate. So it seems to me the party, there's been enough movement on both sides. And if this measure should go through, there'd be $1,200 checks being sent to millions of American workers who are out of work, who income-wise would qualify for that relief. So we did this before, and it absolutely served to stimulate the economy because Americans want to spend. They're criticized for not saving, but we've got foreclosures are going crazy. Credit card bills need to be paid, and we're getting into the holiday season. So if we can, this week, come up with a stimulus bill that benefits individuals, combined with a bill that aids the airlines. And by the way, it's not just the airlines, it's small businesses, small mom and pop operations, such as the convenience store, the bar, the dry cleaner. I tell you, my neck of the woods, and I'm just across the river, Potomac River, from Washington, D.C., we have stores that are not only closed, they are, quote, out of business shut down. So we have significant commercial space for rent, and there's nobody moving in. There's a report out this morning that as the pandemic continues, New York could see a loss. Picture this, 50% of bars and some restaurants in New York City could be gone forever. So I just want you to envision visiting New York City and seeing store after store after store closed with nobody moving in. So Congress has got to be well aware of that. So hopefully you had a chance to watch the wrestling match in America on Tuesday night. It was, as debates go, really a disgrace of a debate. I felt at one point that the moderator had been pushed off the platform, and it really was the Wild Wild West. So I have good news for you. The bipartisan group that sets up these debates is going to change the rules. And one thing they're thinking about is the ability of the man in charge or woman in charge to hit a button and turn somebody's mic off. Well, you can turn somebody's mic off, but that doesn't mean they won't keep yakking, and that doesn't mean the opposite party won't continue to hear them. So my recommendation this morning is to put both of the candidates in a glass or plastic bubble and control the volume that way. The tragedy in that debate on Tuesday night is we really didn't get clarification on economic policy, economic plans, tax reform. Former Vice President Biden was able to at least say, as we know, that he plans to propose raising taxes on businesses. He believes the 2017 tax bill too generous to businesses. And he's also proposing an increase in the capital gains tax, but he would target what he calls high income taxpayers. He's apparently defining that at $400,000 of income. Some might argue that's a bit too low. But in America, as you may know, our long-term capital gains are very favorably taxed. For most taxpayers, it's 15%. And then for taxpayers at a higher level, it maxes out at 20. There's an additional 3.8% tax on higher income investors who have made some decent money. So at best, they're paying 23.8. And when you compare that rate to the regular federal income tax rates, it's incredibly low. It's a great benefit. So I think even if the capital gains taxes were hiked up a bit, for the most part, investors are not going to go crazy. We are running a substantial deficit, and everybody wants to kind of ignore that. Oh, it's a pandemic. Let's do a lot of spending. But at some point in time, you have to be accountable for all that money that is out there. So right now in the States, the presidential election, just weeks away, is certainly taking center stage. The timing is not great, but we did lose a very distinguished Supreme Court justice on September 18, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And now that she has passed, the president would like to rush a replacement justice. So he's made a nomination of a very distinguished judge on the US Federal Court of Appeals. And the process, technically it can be done in a matter of weeks. And I think the administration wants to do that because if America winds up with a repeat of what happened in the year 2000, in which the presidential election was not decided on election day, was not decided the next day, it was decided weeks later when the United States Supreme Court stepped in. There's a potential for that happening again. And I think the president would like to have a friendly vote, if you will, on the court should that happen. I personally believe the better school of thought would be to wait till after the election, give the American people a chance to speak on how they feel about the nominee. But again, when you're holding the cards, you have every right to exercise all the power you got. And the president definitely has the cards, and he apparently has the votes in the Senate. He's only lost 2 Republican senators. So he definitely has the vote to rush this nominee through and get her on the court in advance of the election in November. When we went through this in the year 2000, it was as ugly as can be. It all came down to how the people in one state voted, and that state was Florida. I think Florida still is the most critical state in this go-round. And I remind everybody, not that it matters, but in the year 2000, Vice President Gore had more popular votes than President Bush. But America does not elect on popular votes. It elects on what's called the Electoral College. When President Trump was elected in 2016, Mrs. Clinton had more popular votes than the president. And again, that could happen this time around. Let me point out to you, and you'll see this, of course, on the news, that the candidates would be foolish, absolutely foolish, to do much traveling right now, except in what I'm going to identify as 7 states. You tell me how these 7 states are going to vote, and I can tell you the outcome. I don't need to hear about California, don't need to hear about Alabama, don't need to hear about New York. Those are pretty much decided. Maryland. So we're looking at Florida and North Carolina. That would be your plane trip south. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Minnesota, where the president was last night, and Wisconsin, incredibly important. So those are the key states. So the candidates are not going to be flying around the country. They're going to concentrate in those particular states. The former vice president got on a train yesterday in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was traveling through Ohio and Pennsylvania yesterday and today. The other issue that has come into play this week was a report in the New York Times on Sunday that allegedly President Trump only paid $750 in federal income taxes in year 2016. And interestingly enough, another $750 in federal income taxes in 2017. So the year he was elected president, he paid $750, and his first year in office, he paid $750. The New York Times report is incredibly detailed. We still don't know how they gained access to the president's tax returns. The White House has not denied any of the numbers that have been revealed, although the president did take to the stage on Monday, declaring this was all fake news. He was asked the question on the debate Tuesday, Mr. President, did you pay only $750 in federal income taxes? And he ducked it, never answered it. He suggested he's paid millions of dollars in taxes. And again, as I remind my tax students, we all pay lots of taxes on sales taxes, property taxes, in America, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes. But that wasn't the question. What was the bottom line in paying your taxes? So I was very privileged on Monday afternoon to do an extensive interview. I thought it was a very good interview with Yahoo Finance. So not for today, but when you have time, if you go to Google and you type in Professor Thomas Cooke, Yahoo Finance, my interview with them on Monday will give a good summary of the allegations involving the president. I tried to be very respectful. I asked people not to pass final judgment until they've actually seen the returns, and it may be a long time before we see returns. In July, the United States Supreme Court had 2 cases in front of it involving the president's tax returns. Case number 1, a committee in Congress demanded the right to see the returns. The court ruled you will not get the returns while the president is in office. Case number 2 is a district attorney, a prosecutor in New York City, wants to see the returns to present them in front of a grand jury investigation. The court voted 7-2. Yes, he must show you his returns. But the president has filed additional appeals there, so it's not likely we're going to see those returns in front of a grand jury anytime soon. I have no idea who leaked the returns. I have a suspicion, okay? My suspicion would be, I was thinking, who physically would have those returns? The president, maybe people around him, his accountants, his lawyers, maybe Deutsche Bank, maybe some financial institutions. I think the leak is more likely to have come from a financial institution. Someone within those ranks may have gotten access to the returns, copied them, and anonymously sent them off to the New York Times. I just don't know. But somebody clearly leaked those returns. And I don't think that's ever, a very good thing to have happen. So Juan, back in March, when we were facing the onslaught of this pandemic, and of course I knew it very well because of how it was hitting the university, we had a conversation involving what I try to talk about as a pandemic portfolio, if you will. are there certain investments that you and I should be looking at that would serve to benefit us financially during the pandemic? And I did some thinking on this, and where are people going to be? We're going to be home. What are we going to be doing?
Can I show you the video?
Yeah, that'd be great. We can go back to March and show you some of our observations back then.
I have it's probably like 30 seconds about you speaking and me listening and not acting. Okay, so give me 1 second and I'll show you. I think you're making probably a little bit more on your investments than. Let me know if you can hear it, okay, and if you can see my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can. This is me sneaking into my office at Georgetown.
Okay. This is 30 seconds, okay?
I'm impressed with how Chipotle has done, CMG. Who cannot be impressed with the news coming out of Tesla? Totally unrelated to the virus, but again, strong production numbers and a fairly solid forward path. Who doesn't love Amazon? Are we too late? Are we too late to get on the Amazon train? Assuming for a moment that this so-called shutdown goes through the summer, and if it does, that will be devastating to many, many industries. How would Amazon not continue to be a winner? Assuming we're not in the mood to travel, assuming our colleges, our high schools, our elementary schools are all online in many, many places until December, how does that not benefit a company like Zoom?
That's you.
Did
you invest on that?
Yes, I think the president needs to get a hold of me right away. I'm available to be the Treasury Secretary for the next few months. So that's pretty good. And, I don't think I had to be a genius to come up with, I think Tesla was definitely taking a shot at, and that certainly has proven its worth. And Amazon, what's not to like about Amazon? Real quick Amazon story. What is it, about a year and a half ago? Amazon announced we're looking for a second location. And they came up, every city in America applied, and they came up with a short list. And two of the finalists were a city called Long Island City, New York, and the second one was Crystal City, Virginia. And we're going to give 25,000 jobs to both locations. So there was a lot of excitement in the DC area. We've got jobs coming in here. It's Amazon. And then the political parties in Long Island City started attacking Amazon, didn't like the way it was operating. And within 1 week, Amazon said, bye-bye, we're leaving. And we're going to go someplace else. You know where we're going to go? We're going to go to Crystal City, Virginia. And instead of having 25,000 new jobs, how about 50,000? So we now have this incredible development of Crystal City, Virginia, which is adjacent to our airport, our Reagan National Airport. So that's been a real bonanza for this part of the country now and also moving forward. So great demand for housing, a lot of apartments being built. And Juan, I recall somebody saying to me, I'm so excited. Amazon is moving to my neighborhood. So now, why are you going to work for them? No, but my God, do you realize my property is going up in value? And I said, congratulations. I assume you're selling? No, I'm not selling. Well, let me give you some bad news. Please sit down. The real estate taxes have just gone up. And they said, oh my God, I never thought of that. So sometimes property valuations are not such a good thing unless you are planning to sell sometime soon. So what I've done over the past few months is just kind of sit back and look at what I'm going to call my pandemic portfolio. Are there stocks that we should be looking at carefully? Are there things people are doing at home? I can tell you one thing they've been doing is more cooking. So there was a real spike up in a Baltimore, Maryland company called McCormick Spice. And I noticed over the last 2 weeks, That stock has been driven down. So keep an eye on McCormick Spice. MKC is their symbol. Well, again, you don't have to be a genius to figure out if people are at home, they're watching the tube. And so Netflix, I think, has been a strong stock during that period. I can't say enough about Zoom. You know my feeling about Zoom? I just have this fear that it's one major event away from people attacking it. So I'll tell you, at the university, effective today, we are no longer allowed to set up a Zoom without a password. So we have to give the students a password to get into Zoom. I don't think we've seen this, but the high school students tell me that they enjoy Zoom bombing. And if you want to know what Zoom bombing is, go look at some YouTube videos. It's a class going on in high school where somebody unconnected to the class steps in, starts yelling, screaming, apparently undressing. So there's some very interesting experiences with this so-called Zoom bombing.
We've had that.
Yeah, I've had it. Okay, so if anybody's undressing today, give us a heads up on that one. Back many, many years ago, I was teaching a class, and I've forgotten why, but I looked around the room and I saw so many students with this, looked like the same type of computer. And the computer was something called Apple. And that is so long ago that I knew nothing about the company. So I told the student, come and see me in my office. I said, Professor, you need to know about Apple. And they started telling me all the great things about the product. And I invested in it that very day. And I've never looked back. Juan, there was very interesting news in the last 2 weeks involving a substitute for real meat. And the company is called Beyond Meat, BYND. I went out and did invest in Beyond Meat. I bought the product. I love the product. I know there are some alternatives, but Beyond Meat is now working with McDonald's. They are experimenting with a hamburger product and a sausage product in Canada. And I assume that goes well. Then that affects McDonald's operations in the US. Walmart announced this week that 2,400 stores in America will now feature Beyond Meat. And it just hit a 52-week high this morning. I think that since people are homeowners, that any companies servicing those homes, such as a Home Depot or Lowe's, are companies we ought to look at. You know, Disney has its online platform as well, which is very intriguing. What concerns me with Disney is the announcement that they are laying off people galore in California and yet doing some hiring at their property in Florida. So that is a bit confusing, but we know with the pandemic, it's all based on location, location, location. And then only in America could you pick up a newspaper just months ago and read about the end of a company called Bed, Bath, and Beyond, BBBY. Nice stores, tons of stuff, all related to the home, but they were just dying. So they bring in a new CEO. They decided online is the way to go to supplement our stores. And Juan, this morning, the stock is up 34%. 34%, hitting a 52-week high. It's called Bed, Bath & Beyond, BBBY. Again, I'm not an investor in that, but it's consistent with this notion, I need stuff for the home. Maybe it's a coffee machine. Maybe it's towels. I mean, I'll tell you the criticism of Bed Bath & Beyond is that their inventory has always been so substantial. I mean, I think there's nothing you can't find when you go in the store. Therefore, there's nothing you can't find when you see them online. The other thing they're famous for is sending out flyers to consumers with an automatic 20% off. And again, that becomes extremely attractive with people looking for a discount. So my theory on investing for my life has been invest in what you like, invest in what you use, invest in what you love, but then also ask people around you, what are the things that they're using? And again, I credit my students for giving me a good heads up on what Apple was capable of doing. And then I began to see with the phones. And again, remember, we have a new model of phone coming out with a heavy emphasis on 5G. And I also think we need to recognize the power, the economic power coming out of China. The evidence is very clear. The Chinese consumer is back. The Chinese consumer is back. Now, I know that their model for dealing with COVID-19 was one that we probably could not have executed in America. I wish we had. But how could you ask everybody to shut things down the way they successfully did that in China? And so by all accounts, the Chinese economy is back. It's coming back strong. And consumers are spending. And so again, Apple would seem to benefit by that as well, even though they're likely to take some hits in India and other countries as a result of the pandemic. But we'll see when the new phone comes out, the new model comes out, what the interest is what interest there is in that phone on a global basis. I wanted to take a little bit of time this morning to talk about my background and how I think that can tie in to something beneficial to you. When I graduated, came to Washington, D.C. from Villanova University, where I was a pre-med major. I love telling the story, for 1 year and 1 day. So I tell this to my college students. Everybody shows up at the college, first day, say, what's your major? Oh, I'm going to be a finance major. Okay. Have you ever had a course in finance? No, but I want to be a finance major. So we tongue-in-cheek think of the school as a finance school, even though we have other majors that are also popular. But finance is incredibly popular and their minds are made up. Well, so I was in search of a major and I wound up going to the liberal arts approach and took a few courses in law along the way. That was enough to get me excited about going to law school. Well, the long and short of it is that after graduating law school, I decided I would go back and get another degree in law called a master's in law. Not sure why I did that looking back, but that really turned me on to the notion of teaching. And then one day I found out that if you teach at Georgetown University, I think other schools have the same thing, and you're full-time, you're allowed to pursue a degree for free. So I thought that was a pretty good fringe benefit. And I saw the law school had a concentration in tax. So I went back to get a master's degree in tax. And let me tell you what that generated for me. What that generated for me was meeting a new type of person, new types of associations. And I eventually became president, CEO of a tax association out on the West Coast in a city called Vancouver, Washington. And I did that for 10 years. And sure enough, the IRS got a hold of me, said, would you lecture for us in the United States? I said, absolutely, yes. We have shows all around the country, educational shows. Would you be willing to teach? And I said, yes. And then I did tax seminars all across the United States, and various groups would invite me. So that specialty, if you will, that niche in tax probably opened up more doors for me than my law degree ever did. It was what we call the specialty. So I'm proud of the fact that at our university, just a few years back, we decided to create an online master's in finance. When I say online, it is what I'm going to call 90% online. It typically does require some presence in Washington, D.C. to meet and greet fellow students, as well as working on projects. But now I've been involved in that for 5 years. And my involvement has been, the program requires a global finance experience. And we decided we would pick a country, an area that could use our consulting work, that could benefit from our recommendations. And we picked South Africa. And in South Africa, we picked Johannesburg. So for the last 5 years, I've been working with clients in Johannesburg, banks, Coca-Cola, I mean, a wide range of clientele. And our students have been working on those projects and then traveling to the country to meet their clients and experience the culture. Unfortunately, in April, we had to cancel the in-person opportunity, and it looks like for 2021, that's likely to be canceled again. We are looking at not much international travel for faculty and students next spring. Nothing definite has been said, but that's where the trend is. And it's a shame. So we wound up working on consulting projects by way of Zoom, and we presented our final reports and findings by way of Zoom. But it certainly is not the full experience that we wanted. So again, I think anytime you can go out and pursue your dream by creating this niche that allows you to distinguish yourself. And Juan and I were talking about this earlier. For a program that hasn't been around so long, we have been ranked number 2 in America by what's called bestschools.org, and number 5 in America by US News and World Report. And the group that ranked us number 2 had Harvard 1, Georgetown 2, and Columbia University 3. Our program is 21 months in length, and it is a total concentration in finance. And if you'd like to know what the current trend is, the trend seems to be in data. I do not teach. They have a course called Big Data. I don't teach that. There's a course called Small Data. So data is definitely a focus. I think the students, by the way, after the 21 months, many will stay where they are, but get promoted, and others will be out in search of a new career. And for that, we do have, I think, a very vibrant career office that can assist students in that. So if you go online and you just look for the Masters of Science and Finance program at Georgetown, you'll see the list of courses that one would take. And again, substantially online. So the good news is that we were online with our master's program well before the whole university became online because of the pandemic. Applications have been through the roof. And I was telling Juan, I sense that there are qualified individuals sitting at home, working at home, saying, now that I think I've got extra time, I'm not going back and forth to the office, why don't I look and see if there's some kind of a program that would help advance me? And in many cases, employers are willing to help finance that along the way. So that can be a very positive thing. So this gives you some insight, I think, as to where we are at this moment in time. I would like to think, by the way, I do honestly believe that if they can strike a deal on economic stimulation, that Wall Street will embrace this in a very big way. I do not believe that this is priced into the market. I think there have been so many ups and downs that there's been a complete lack of confidence. Now, Monday night or Tuesday night, after the debate, the futures on Wall Street looked very bleak. And then come Wednesday morning, there were rumors of a possible deal, and Wall Street shot up, the Dow shot up over 500 points. And this morning, it's really been all around. I think as we look and see where we are right now, we are up on the Dow 113, NASDAQ up 104, and I'm just looking at the headline. Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin take a last-ditch shot at a Corona stimulus deal. And that, I tell you, if they strike a deal, if there's any indication of a deal, you can expect a jump up. If they don't strike a deal, here's my impression. We weren't really expecting one. So I don't think you'd see the radical movement heading downwards. I could be wrong on that, but I think a lot of people have no confidence in Congress getting this job done. So good news, I think, would be welcomed. Bad news would come across as really no big surprise. And we'll see. Juan?
As always, it's great. I'm taking notes of that. Next time I won't miss them. Did you actually invest on those?
I did.
Good
and
job.
I've toyed with looking at a Tesla car. The only concern I have is I wish I got, if I was going to get Tesla, I wish I had gotten it early enough that my charging would be free. So the charging is no longer free. So if you drive past a Tesla car, that person may not be paying for their energy, whereas you and I would be. The other pressure on Tesla, but it just seems to avoid it, is petrol prices being so far down. The push to that type of energy shouldn't be there. But I think more and more people are saying, you know what, looks like a pretty good alternative to me. It's a very sporty looking car, good performance, good reviews, and what's not to like about Elon? I mean, that's just what it comes down to.
I have a question before we go into the questions of the group.
Yeah.
How do you explain what you just call what is like kind of a catastrophe in small businesses, real estate, right? Because that will impact the real estate.
Big time.
Right now, to read the numbers and seeing, real estate prices going up, then you have foreclosures, then you also have people that will not be paying rent, and you have this like it's kind of difficult to read what's going on, and you have the markets in almost all-time highs, huge valuations, and well, valuations if we talk about relative or price to earnings and that, although the interest rate is low, but there's two worlds, seems to me, and even in the same thing, you can separate the market in two sectors. You see IT, you see communications, which is Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, that you also mentioned on the last time, and then you have real estate, financials, uh, utilities, which are the difference between the top sector and the lowest sector is probably above 80%. So it's I think it's difficult right now to read the market, at least for me.
Well, I don't know where, America's famous for its malls. I don't know where the American mall is. I absolutely do not know. Because I think as we look at that model today, it's just not working. The high-end stores, some of them will survive. One of our very popular department stores, H&M, just announced lots of store closings in America this morning. People are nervous about even walking around the mall. So I think the whole concept of the mall as a venue for shopping is going to be changed. And, I gave a lecture in the spring on a topic called force majeure. And the issue there, which is yet to be decided, is can I, in my commercial lease, use the pandemic as an excuse for not paying rent? We never thought to, we include in our leases floods and hurricanes, farmers include droughts, and this quote thing called an act of God. And no one has clearly defined, is a pandemic an act of God? So what we've seen happening is landlords and their tenants trying to maybe renegotiate some leases. I like the idea, if I'm your landlord and you've been with me for 10 years, I'm going to tell you, no rent, don't pay me anything for June, July, August, September. I want you to get back on your feet. But we're going to add all those months to the end of the existing lease. So now you're going to be committed to me longer, but you're getting relief now. Look, what's the alternative? I throw you out on your butt, and then the store is empty. I got nobody else coming in. So I think it's incumbent on landlords to work with their tenants to figure out a path towards survival. And this thing called force majeure is becoming an incredibly important topic. And by the way, Juan, I was just thinking, in March, when you just played the video, the one stock I mentioned that I was very high on, and I still am today, is Chipotle Mexican Grill. Let me tell you about this Chipotle company. Boy, have they gotten it right. Whatever if you ever get a chance to study this company has figured it out. They've got the right setup. They've got the right delivery process. It's extremely popular. Once upon a time, I would say it was the most popular destination for students. It may still be today. And I'm looking at it in the last 52 weeks, Juan, its low was $415. And at this moment, $1,250. This stock is incredibly strong. I'm looking at a 1-month chart, and it does show a downtick, which I'd want to look at carefully. Then when I look at a 1-year chart, it's incredibly robust. So it's showing me that it suffered March, April, started coming back in May, and it's currently going through a bit of a hiccup. But again, that's one I think we ought to look at, Chipotle. And if you don't know the history of this company, it was once upon a time owned by McDonald's, and McDonald's unloaded it. I wonder today if McDonald's thinks that was a good move or not. But they absolutely have got the delivery of food. They've just got it. They figured it out. Let me just put it that way. They figured it out. Good name recognition. Tried not to close for a substantial period of time. And they've had their headaches over the years. So we've had bouts of some food poisoning, listeria, and I think they've overcome those concerns as well in terms of cleanliness and delivering a good product. So yeah, I agree with you. I think real estate's incredibly challenging. That being said, I've just become an investor in a commercial real estate project in Pittsburgh. I, along with my partners, hopefully they're not listening, we have bought an industrial dump. I mean, this is a dump. If I showed you a picture, and I'll send it to you, Juan, of this property, you would say, you must be crazy. Is this taken from a war zone? So this is an old industrial plant in Pittsburgh that has value in terms of location and the size of the property. And we are now looking out, and we are turning this into a first-class technology center, which we think will be extremely attractive to universities and the tech area. And we may actually, before we've even dug a hole in the ground, have a tenant, which is incredible. So it is my first time investing in a commercial investment. And I have a colleague, I teach a course in real estate to incoming freshmen, and I decided my investment was not substantial. I'd like to give this thing a shot and see where it goes. But again, we're looking, 5 years out. Again, I live right outside the city, and I live in an area called Roslyn, Virginia, which is being heavily redeveloped. And the new trend is not condominiums. It's now apartments. And again, I think that's being driven by this Amazon phenomenon. And I'm next to a hotel, which is coming down to the ground. And I was talking to the developer, and he said, I have this vision. You've seen my plans. It's a hotel, 4-star. It's apartments galore. And I'm going to build a convention center in the middle, because this part of the city is sorely in need of a convention center. So when I spoke to him the other day, I said, how's it going? Well, I'm going to give up some hotel rooms. I'm going to build more apartments, and I'll create the shell of the convention center, but I won't fill it in. Because, Tom, I don't know what's happening with conventions 4, 5, 6, 10 years from now. Las Vegas is going through this now. Las Vegas has not had one major convention since March. And it has no idea what's going to happen come early 21. So there's a sense that the convention model may have to change. We may wind up with what I'm going to call virtual conventions. Now, another project near me where the developer said, listen how smart I am. I'm building 3 levels of parking, but I'm building 1 level where the height is so tall, I can convert all those parking spots into apartments. Pretty clever. So again, you have to think, when you think real estate, you're thinking not only today and tomorrow, but 4 and 5 years out. I do think those small businesses that have gone under will be incredibly slow to return. We had seen some of those businesses disappearing as early as January, not really COVID related. But once COVID struck, I think more and more, I think one reality is that small businesses are not sitting on a pile of cash to handle the contingencies. It's not that they were surviving day by day, but maybe month by month, and suddenly to be shut down, or even if open, have very little business, has been devastating towards those businesses. So, and I think we all pay the price for that. Unemployment is not a good thing. And there's a sense of unease and restlessness amongst the population. So anything we can do to support people, and I hear this, oh, you're paying people more money than they would make when they're working. Let's get over it. It's more important that we put money in the pocket, in the hands of people that desperately need it, than to read about how there's an increase in alcoholism in America because we're all at home, tense. There's an increase in divorce. There's an increase in spousal abuse. Those are all side effects of the tension, the environment that we're in. We need to get beyond that. The quote, the new normal, I have no idea what that is.
And we will never know until we have immunity, right?
Yep. And even then, the experts will tell you, vaccine or no vaccine, we're looking at a long period of time before this may just be like the flu. It happens to be a virus. I think we're getting better at treating people. I think we figured out the hard way what works, what doesn't work. I hope that we have a vaccine in play. My guesstimate is sometime in the spring. But as I've told my students, you will not be the first in line for the vaccine. It'll be healthcare providers, and then eventually people based on age. And then we'll get down to the college students, because for the most part, their percentage of contacting the virus is relatively small. I did have students, by the way, in the spring come down with the virus after they came back from spring break trips, and thank God they've all recovered. But the other concern we have is that people that have recovered are still showing some lingering effects. I have one colleague that I know of who admitted that he came down with COVID, said he was in bed for almost a month, and he still has trouble breathing when he goes out for a walk. So there are some lingering effects that may or may not go away. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, we have one here in Peeptrade, one of the members. He's doing well. Can you discard a second, drop on the GDP in the U.S. third quarter?
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
Would you discard fourth quarter drop in the GDP in the U.S.?
I think it's hard. I do believe there's the potential for the end of the year being extremely strong. And by the way, I remind people that there are a lot of people on retirement that are counting on that because their payments in 2021 are dependent on their account balances at the end of the year. The president has been riding high on Wall Street's performance, and as he frequently says, how's your 401k? So I think leading up to the election, he's counting on more and more good news. And that gets, that got me thinking last night. I think the president desperately needs to have a signing ceremony for the world to watch where he is signing a stimulus package. I think if Congress and the president can't reach a deal, I think they all suffer. And I think this time is extremely interesting, just weeks before the election. And I think that puts more and more pressure on the White House to, hopefully settle their differences and get this thing done. I just hope the Democratic side is willing to compromise as well. And everybody wants the moon, but sometimes you have to everybody wants the cake, but sometimes you're better off taking a few slices of the cake than holding out for the whole cake, which you don't wind up getting. So I think the name of the game is compromise. They do that often enough, and they should be doing it now. I do not see any breaking news that they've reached any kind of a deal yet. Hopefully, maybe it happens this afternoon. But I think that the end of the year, my thinking is will be somewhat robust. One concern I did have, Juan, was that hypothetically, if Vice President Biden was to be elected president in November, and the United States Senate changed hands and became Democratic, and the House remains Democratic, would the proposal to raise taxes, especially capital gains, not be more likely? I think that's priced into the market. I don't think people are going to panic sell in November, December. Some will. Should I sell and pay 20% or wait and pay more? Again, that depends on your outlook on investing. So I don't anticipate we're going to have a downtick because of people desperately selling. There's always end of the year selling. There's always people trying to capture, if you will, their losses to offset their gains. But I don't expect this year will be any different. I think if those stimulus checks come out, we'll see increased spending. The airlines will keep flying. I do think, Juan, that I have not flown since February, but I have more confidence today in possibly flying than I had 2 weeks ago because of United Airlines' announcement that they now have a piece of equipment, I sure hope it works, where they will test me right at the airport and then board me on the plane. And they did that because Hawaii was not allowing any travelers to enter the state without a 14-day quarantine. So Hawaii has said, starting this month, anybody coming on a United flight that's been tested, you will not have to be quarantined. That will be robust for travel to Hawaii. That'll be robust for the Hawaiian, if you will, tourist industry. So that technology, look, I know it exists because they use it at the White House. You and I can't use it. So I think that, boy, if I could find the company that's going to lead the way on this instant testing, put that on my list of possible investments. That'll be an incredible winner. And how about testing at home? Wow. If I can get a kit to test myself at home, I'll pay for that. It's that level of confidence you want to have, especially if you have children and grandparents in the household. You certainly want to be, people say, oh, the children don't get sick. Well, the children can get sick without showing it, and then they bring it home. And we know there's enough cases of that with family members contracting the virus. I'm not blaming the children. It's the environment that we all happen to be in.
There's one, I'll send it over to you via email in Europe, 15-minute test.
Well, that's what we need. And by the way, think about the airlines. They would they're going to ask me to show up early. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Would I rather get tested than waste my time in the lounge? Absolutely. I'd like to know that my fellow passengers have been tested. People say, oh, you can wear a mask. Well, you're not wearing a mask when you're eating on the plane. You're not wearing a mask when you're drinking. So that I would know that the person sitting near me has been tested would be incredibly positive news.
Yeah. So we have just a few questions here.
Yeah.
Him asked, what kind of changes could do the world to make a better version of the actual capitalism? What actions could young people, without an important role in the actual system, do to make real changes of the way of life?
Well, one thing that the younger generation has gotten a hold of, and I congratulate them on that, is the push towards social responsibility investing. Actually looking at what companies are investing in and where they are. I think that's a very positive thing. I have done substantial work with Coca-Cola in South Africa, and I will tell you that the projects we have worked on there are not very active projects in America. They involve, quote, a world without waste. So Coca-Cola is determined to create an environment in which things become incredibly recyclable and discourage, if you will, the use and abuse of plastic. And where plastic does exist, figure out a way to get it back into the environment in a very safe way. So I think the fact that young children today wear these plastic bracelets representing their concern for plastic in the ocean is a very positive thing. But I think being socially responsible in investing is definitely a good thing. There absolutely is a perception, and it's reality, that there's this small group at the top, and then there's the rest of us. When the president touts Wall Street, how well it's doing, I wish he would announce what percent of the people he's talking to are involved in Wall Street. What percent of the population has a retirement plan, has investments for retirement, and it's relatively small. And I love it when at the rallies, people are yelling and screaming when he says, how's your 401k? Half the audience doesn't even have a clue as to what a 401k plan is. So I do think increasingly people are looking at the meat behind their investments. And I think that is definitely a step in the right direction. The other thing we've done in South Africa, which I just love, is I always come up with a project It has a social responsibility bent to it. So we work with a charity in South Africa called Hope. It's actually called Hope Worldwide. And we consult with them on projects helping to get aid and assistance to babies, infants, 1 and 2-year-old children. Because the thinking is, if you can get nourishment to a child very early in life, that brain will develop in a much better way, and they will be a more productive citizen years down the road. And you know what's interesting? I can come up with a project involving a bank. I come up with a project involving a merger and acquisition, and my finance students will all list the charity project near the top of their selection. That says an awful lot about graduate students today, this idea of giving something back. So I think that's also a very good sign as well. And let me tell you something. If you ever get the chance, you just have to, and you visit South Africa, you will see that there's the haves and the have-nots. And there's a lot of have-nots. When this COVID struck, my first reaction was, oh my God, I've been to these shanty towns. I know how people are forced to live. This virus has devastated South Africa, devastated South Africa. Their cases continue to be incredibly strong. So I don't know, quite frankly, if our program will ever get back to South Africa anytime soon. We probably couldn't even go if we wanted to go now because of airline regulations, but that's a very tough one. So I do think the younger generation is absolutely taking into account how we can do things better, how can we can be better as individual people and as a population. I think that's good news. And by the way, they like to work for NGOs, which I think is also a very positive sign. So I want to be more encouraged than discouraged in that regard. That's a great question, though.
23%, 26% of unemployment, I think, in South Africa.
Oh, it's geez, I was told in some sectors it's actually at 50%. It's devastating, and crime is up, and it's just. And I was telling my colleague, I wonder how many of my contacts have left the country. Have they decided to go someplace else because of this? I think that probably has happened. So it'll be years for that area to recover. And I was also scheduled this year to work in the neighboring country of Namibia. I was really looking forward to that, but again, I won't have that opportunity. Their COVID rate is relatively low. I think they did a very good job, much smaller landmass in shutting things down than South Africa was able to do. But can you imagine the hit to certain segments of that economy now? I mean, think about Cape Town was like the ultimate destination. That's just not happening.
Yeah, it's one of the worst numbers I've seen so far.
Yeah. There's no way. I mean, there's no way we're traveling back there in 21.
So Monse says Nike also had a boost after earnings.
Yeah.
Came out a few weeks ago. It makes sense because people are trying to be active even at home.
Yeah, I mean, I have invested in Nike before, not currently. And you're right. I should have taken a look at that. That again, since we're home, we're working out. Sports is our escape. So Nike and Under Armour are two companies to certainly look at. I like the Nike model. I'm somewhat prejudiced because for 10 years, I ran a graduate program in Vietnam, and Nike had a strong presence there with its factories. I had a chance to tour, and anytime I see a shoe manufactured in Vietnam, I'm really excited about seeing that. By the way, Vietnam is small potatoes compared to its production line in China, but it does economically help the country of Vietnam. By the way, Juan, Vietnam's done an excellent job on keeping the numbers down. So I congratulate them as well. But again, can't travel there. So tourism is obviously a big piece of their pie, and that's not happening.
Well, maybe you can do your program in Mexico.
Well, the students, they always want a global destination. And for some stupid reason, oh, Mexico's not global enough. One time we threatened to send them to Montreal. How dare you? You think that's global? Oh, my God. So they don't even recognize Canada as a country. So they want something that is exotic. And I had thought about proposing that they go to Vietnam. I mean, we may wind up looking at Vietnam as an alternative in 22 and beyond. If I just would hate to, to say South Africa is over. I want to be optimistic and think that it's not. We've done so much good work there. We've made so many good friends, and
Yeah.
and clients.
There's one more question.
Yeah.
We can have a couple of minutes to take it. Uh, it's from Gala asking, what are your thoughts about going back to normal after the vaccine?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I do think we're going to have to divide the population up. Certainly, the younger population will be more enthusiastic about going back. In fact, they've got maybe overly enthusiastic. I hear this from my students. The bars are doing excellent business, and people are not social distancing the way they should. And as you start drinking, you become more relaxed in terms of wearing the mask or not wearing the mask. So I think it's going to be a substantial amount of time before we reach any level of comfort. Let me give an example. I could envision that if and when we get back to the campus for live instruction, I've seen the model already. Our class with 50 chairs in it will now have 15. Meaning, if your class meets 2 days a week, we'll assume you get to go on Monday, and the other part of the class goes to go on Wednesday, and we're going to still have to teach online as well. So we assume the rest of the group would be online. I think there probably will be a wall of plastic, some kind of a shield between the students and the instructor, and I'm more than willing to do that. I think safeguards can be in place to let me come back and teach live. And then if you want to be there, you'll be there. We won't be shaking hands. We won't have any close connection, but that class would also be out there. I think it's extremely important that we get back to school. And I'll tell you, if we don't get back to school, students are going to rethink, as I'm sure they're doing already. And mom and dad are going to rethink, why am I paying all this good money for my children to be at a computer? So I think it's a matter of survival that the schools get back. And I think it's especially true with your elementary schools and your high schools, because the parents, some of them want to get back to work. Look, if you are working in the hotel industry and you just can't work from home, you got to be there doing the grunt work. You need somebody to be watching your children. And the fact that your children are not in school and they're at home, there's an additional expense. And maybe one of the spouses now has to stay at home. So I think the quicker we can get people back to work, the better we will be as a whole. I recognize that some businesses will be slower than others. So I envision the vaccine being available in the spring. A lot of us having it by early summer. I just have this fear in the back of my mind. I don't know why, but do I want to wait a few months to see how it's working? So right now, count me in on that group. So now we're talking late summer, early fall. So I think Dr. Fauci has suggested maybe late fall of 21 before we see some semblance of normalcy, but years down the road before it's completely the way we would want it to be. I can't wait for the day that we greet each other and shake hands. I just don't know when that will be. And I think we'd be naive to guess that it's anytime sooner than that.
We have a trip because there's a lot of people here that are participating on the Mexican Stock Exchange Peeptrade Challenge, and they will participate on the next one, the finalists, and I hope we can see each other because your school won, and we had tickets paid for New York for the NASDAQ, and we were not able. I think it was the right call to do.
No. There's no. Let me tell you something. There are buses near where I live to go back and forth to New York. Those buses haven't run since March.
No.
Okay. Amtrak, the train is going back and forth. The cars are empty. The Macy's Day Parade, Thanksgiving Day Parade, New York City. No, not happening. New Year's Eve, Times Square, canceled. So people are not rushing back to New York City. I realize Wall Street is open, NASDAQ is open, but you would have you just wouldn't want to take that risk. God forbid somebody got sick while they were there. They're going to turn around and, blame you, blame me for
Of course.
encouraging it.
Yeah, but I hope we will have the ceremony maybe as soon as it's kind of safe.
Absolutely.
And you know, I'm always a fan of your program. You've been twice champions. Once
Absolutely.
once you got your students built hedge fund
Yep.
after the challenge. So I'm a big fan of the Mastering Finance program of Georgetown. So it's a great, I've seen it. You've competed with MIT, with the University of Chicago, and you guys are doing quite a good job. I'm not surprised the school is doing so well.
Well, I'll give you a funny story. So I think the one victory that I'm so proud of with Peeptrade was at the University of Chicago, and we were presented with a beautiful gold trophy. Okay.
Yeah.
So the professor takes the trophy, and he's heading to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, and the TSA agents are having a field day. Sir, we know there's something inside. What is this? It's a trophy. We just won this contest. No, we're going to need to take this apart. So they were trying to run all sorts of tests on this trophy to discover that I was transporting drugs between Chicago and Washington, D.C. The good news is that we cleared TSA. And the other good news is I walked through the airport carrying the trophy, not explaining to anybody what it was about, and walked on the plane with it. And the flight attendants wanted to make sure it was properly protected in the overhead bin. So we were very, very proud. I display that trophy every chance I get when we do a school presentation. So I strong believer in the competition. It gives you a chance to get together, pool your knowledge, your resources, and begin to think outside the box. And what I love is the research that the students do in picking one stock over another stock. One thing you learn is when to hold them and when to unload them. And that's also part of the challenge. And you get to see how other competitors are doing. So, and by the way, the contest winner is not necessarily the school that makes the most money or the team. It's the team that followed the rules carefully and did well as well. So we have won that contest without being the biggest winner financially, but follow the rules of the game, and that's extremely important.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that the last challenge we went out, of course, and we saw the winners. I think it was no, it was not BYU. I think it was USC or someone like that, undergraduates, and they were drinking from the trophy in the club that we just randomly met.
Well,
they were having this mega rum and coke on.
well, I will confess that at the hotel you put us up at in Chicago,
Yeah.
there was some serious drinking out of that cup on Saturday night after the contest was over.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I really appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we can see each other, give you the award at the Nasdaq building, and you might meet some of the guys here in the Zoom meeting, because we are they're participating, some of them, on the challenge.
No, I would enjoy that. And again, my message to you today is to stay safe, follow what the doctors are telling us, what the experts are telling us, not always what the politicians are telling us. There's a protocol we can follow, and don't be embarrassed wearing a mask. There's no shame in wearing a mask because it's protecting others as well as yourself. So stay safe, and I wish everybody a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. It might be important, maybe out of the subject, but is there a way of working on the U.S. on finance areas for Mexican people and finance studies degree and master?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think the answer is yes. We have had students from other countries in the program, but I have to say, I'm not sure if they were in the program and then relocated or were outside. I think it would be a matter of whether the program was recognized by the local government. But if you visit our website, if you just go online to Georgetown University, Masters of Science in Finance, there's a link there where they will answer any questions that you had regarding the program. We've got a great team of administrators overseeing the program.
Yeah, I posted on the chat so everyone can have access.
Yeah, it's actually doubled in size, I think, within 2 years, which is incredible.
Good to know. Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for your time. It's always great chatting.
Great, I really enjoyed it. And again, be safe, everybody. God bless.
God bless, and hope to see you 2021.
Thank you. Same.
Okay. Gracias a todos los que estuvieron aquí el día de hoy.